We really would love to know what your plan is to help lower the cost of living.
Yeah, first of all, thank you both for being here. And yours is a story I hear around the country as I travel. And in terms of both rightly having the right to have aspirations and dreams and ambitions for your family, and working hard and finding that the American dream is, for this generation and so many recently, far more elusive than it's been. And we need to deal with that.
How are you going to bring down the cost of food and groceries?
Good. Very good. Thank you. So we have to start always with energy. Always. I don't want to be boring about it, but there's no bigger subject. It covers everything. If you make donuts, if you make cars, whatever you make, energy is a big deal, and we're going to get that. It's my ambition to get your energy bill within 12 months down 50%. If I can do that, we've done a hell of a job. 5-0, not 15, 50.
Trump has a plan for economic prosperity. Harris does not. Tell us more. Compare these two economic stories.
Well, it's really a pretty easy comparison. With Trump, he wants to cut taxes, which generate consumer spending and investment. He wants to reduce the regulatory state that's so negative for American business, again, to encourage growth. And he wants to encourage domestic energy production, which will not only lower the cost of energy for businesses and drive growth, but it'll reduce the cost of virtually everything. Harris, on the other hand, wants to increase taxes on people and businesses that have been successful, which will be growth diminishing. She's given no indication that she would reduce this regulatory state that the Democrats and particularly the Biden-Harris administration have done so much to grow. And I think it's very unlikely that she will back off her career-long commitment to reduce fossil fuels and advance green energy, although she does claim that she now supports fracking, at least in Pennsylvania. So I think it's a pro-growth versus an anti-growth policy. She talks about an opportunity economy, but I don't know where the opportunity is going to come from if you don't have economic growth, and her policies would not encourage economic growth.
All right, guys, so we got to talk about Kamala Harris and the economy, because normal, everyday, working class American people have questions about what is Kamala Harris going to do. Is she going to continue the disastrous policies of the Biden administration, or is she going to go in a different direction? Now, up until this point, there's been a whole lot of confusion about exactly what Kamala wants to do, okay, and how she's going to handle the economy, because she's not really answering any questions, okay? It's not enough for her to do these softball interviews with Oprah Winfrey and local news outlets who are not pressing her at all to get solid answers and detailed plans in regards to what she's going to do to help out the everyday working class American, okay? And this is a big problem because she has put out some cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs policies, like, for example, taxing unrealized capital gains and price controls, which have sent off an alarm, especially among the financial community.
$4 trillion tax increase that they're going to be imposing, saying, yeah, if you're making less than $400K, you have nothing to worry about. They want to tax unrealized gains of billionaires because they have money with people over $100 million. Let's just say you do that with 25%. You know what the business owner is going to do? You know what the billionaire is going to do? They're going to say, hey, let go of 25% of employees. We got to fire a bunch of other people. Next thing you know, market tanks. And then think about the 62-year-old person, 64-year-old person who's got $750,000 in their 401k, thinking about retiring. What if that 750 goes like this to 375 because of market tanks due to bad policies with Kamala? That 64-year-old person that was about to retire in a year has to work till 75 years old. That's what bad policies do. They have bad consequences, and her policies carries no weight with anybody today.
Because anybody with an ounce of financial literacy or knowledge about how economics works understands that Kamala Harris's economic policies will be an absolute disaster for the country, okay? The stock market will tank, the economy will crash. These are the type of proposals that Kamala Harris is putting out there, to the point where investors are coming out and saying on national television that, hey, I'm kind of concerned about the direction that the country's headed in, especially if Kamala gets elected, which is why a lot of the smart money, they're just saying out loud, hey, I'm going to move some of my assets to assets that are seen as more of a safe haven, more time tested, like, for example, gold.
If Harris was elected, I would pull my money from the market. I'd go into cash and I'd go into gold, because I think the uncertainty regarding the plans they outlined would create a lot of uncertainty in the markets and likely lower markets.
Are you worried about the future of the U.S. economy? With so much uncertainty in the air, it is natural to fret about the security of your retirement savings. However, there's one asset that stands the test of time, and that is gold. For centuries, gold has been a hedge against market volatility and economic instability. With a gold IRA from Noble Gold Investments, you can harness the power of precious metals in order to secure your financial future. By rolling over your existing IRA or 401k into a self-directed gold IRA, you can enjoy the potential for long-term growth and stability. Diversify your portfolio with a tangible asset that has real value. Setting up a gold IRA with Noble Gold Investments has never been easier with its streamlined process and expert guidance. This election year, do not let the volatility and uncertainty keep you up at night. Vote for the timeless safety of gold and silver in 2024. And Noble Gold Investments will give you up to 10 1-ounce silver Trump coins or a 10-ounce silver American flag bar if you open a qualified account. Go to noblegoldinvestments.com now. That is noblegoldinvestments.com. And just remember, there's a risk with every investment and there's no guarantee of any kind.
Tax. Let me ask you a different question. Do you think that the American public, voters, many of whom, by the way, have the opportunity to vote right now?
Yes.
I mean literally right now.
Early voting has already started in many key states.
Do you believe that they deserve to know specific details about her economic plan? Should you know what your tax rate is going to be, or at least what she believes your tax rate should be, before you go to the polls? Should you know what the regulatory sort of regime in her perfected world would look like? I think these are sort of singular important questions. And you could say, maybe you're not supposed to know these things, but I think that's what people want to understand.
She's laid out a broad vision for what are her priorities. And I think your average American voters got to look at the chaos, the unpredictability, the sort of careening around the field of the former president, and a vice president who says, to your point, we're going to keep a lot of the same policies and agendas. The first thing she came out with in terms of an economic policy, and it upset some in my caucus, was a proposal for a cap gains rate increase that was lower than what President Biden had been looking for.
I think taxes on unrealized gains is a big one. It's not going to affect me. It's not going to affect anybody at this table. But it
won't affect me.
Yeah, it's a big change. Like, you could talk about numbers and argue back and forth and say we're going to do capital gains at this number or that number, and those are all arguments that make sense and are not taking us into a new world. But taxing on unrealized gains, and while it would not impact me at this point, I do worry that down the road it would be extended. It's just a new way of looking at things to say we're going to tax what you don't have. That's a sore point, and it's a big deal. Is that something you think she firmly believes in?
I think it's part of the proposals of the campaign, which is to try and find some way to get at this system of buy, borrow, die that allows the very wealthiest Americans to borrow against the unrealized gains in their portfolio. There are implementation challenges,
Senator,
I think, with making progress towards this. If she would come on this show and
Yeah, so you seen that? You heard that, okay? That's Senator Chris Coons, who's a Democrat, saying straight up that, yeah, I mean, her economic agenda is basically the same as Biden's, right? It's going to be more of the same, plus her Looney Tunes policy proposals like taxing unrealized capital gains. You heard him say that. Yeah, I think that's a part of the campaign's promise. And, this is what they're running on, right? So, believe Democrats when they tell you that, yeah, it's going to be more of the same, right? Kamala Harris is going to double and triple down on the same disastrous economic policies of the Biden administration, plus go more far left with it with some of these communist proposals, right? This is what she wants to do, okay? Believe them when they tell you, okay? Believe them. So for me personally, I don't really need to hear more from Kamala Harris to believe she's a communist, right? She's already convinced me enough, okay, that she's going to be a disaster, despite the fact that she hasn't really said that much, right? But what she has said in the past versus the things that she has put out there, yeah, I don't need to really hear more from her. However, there are people who do. There are people who are begging to hear more from Kamala Harris. Hey, Kamala, sit down and explain to us why you want to do an unrealized capital gains tax, right? Why do you want to raise taxes across the board? Why is it that you want price controls? Why do you want these cuckoo for cocoa policies, right? That's essentially what this CNBC panel is asking for here. They're basically saying, listen, why is Kamala not doing real interviews, right? Why is she not coming on our show? Why is she not going on Fox News? Why is she not sitting down doing real interviews, answering these questions that the American people have, okay? And they're going to confront Senator Chris Coons on this. And I want to react to it because he's going to basically go into word salad trying to explain why Kamala Harris is still running from the media. So without further ado, let's get into it.
On this show, and just like you do, and hopefully President Trump's going to come on, but former President Trump, if she would come on, we could get answers to a lot of these things. And I'm just wondering, as a surrogate that advises the campaign, there is an effort to rope-a-dope this thing right to the election, in my view. And the other side's done 40 or 50 interviews with J.D. Vance. I think I don't have to take my shoes off to count on my fingers and toes how many interviews that she's done along with Governor Walz. And that looks like a deliberate effort just not to face the hard questions and to try to, I don't know, I think Americans might finally say, I don't like the way this is working. I want to know. I think Andrew was getting at that in another way, that we would like to know something. We'd like to see questions asked and answers provided for all these things. And we may never get that. We only got 40 days left.
Yeah, so here's the thing. He's right in the sense that when you talk to people who are undecided, right, or are leaning against Kamala, but they're still kind of undecided or whatever, the number one thing they say is that, well, I don't know what she wants to do. I don't know that much about her, right? Which, I mean, in my opinion, I personally think there's plenty of information out there about her, right? Believe the things that she said 3, 4, 5 years ago, right? That's who she really is, okay? Believe that, okay? But I think what people are saying is that, well, I don't know enough about who she is now. And that is a valid concern. That is probably her biggest issue. The problem with Kamala is that she doesn't have the ability to face the tough questions, especially when it comes to the economy, because despite having an economics degree from an HBCU, Howard University, she doesn't really seem to know all that much about economics or the economy. And I just can't imagine her going on a platform like this and really sitting down and having that conversation, right? So I think that's part of the problem. The problem for Kamala is damned if you do, damned if you don't. If you don't say anything, what happens is that you lose points because people don't know enough about you, right? They don't trust you, okay, because you're afraid to sit down for interviews and to answer questions. But if Kamala actually starts to talk, then people are going to discover that she's an idiot, right? And so it's really damned if you do, damned if you don't, right? So they've just decided, you know what? We're going to hide, right? We'd rather hide than to answer the questions that the American people have, right? And up until this point, these little interviews with Oprah and with these local news outlets or whatever, like these very friendly interviews, it's just not moving the needle, right? It's not moving the needle. People aren't getting enough from her, okay? She's actually getting roasted over the fact that she continues to give these same answers over and over and over again, talking about her middle-class background in response to the economy, rather than to actually really talk about the policies and the details, okay?
We just had Vice President Harris say, yes, let's do another presidential debate. And Donald Trump say no. And you have to agree that a nationally televised hour-long debate is one way to answer a lot of direct questions.
So it's just...
Except it's not, right? Because in the debate, because the moderators were so concerned about debating Trump, they didn't ask Kamala Harris any real tough questions when it comes to the economy. She didn't even answer the first question of, does she believe that the economy is better off today than it was under Trump, right? She didn't answer that question. So debates are pointless. Debates are not going to move the needle because Kamala's not held to any real standard in the debates, right? So, I mean, at this point, the Democrats, they're really stuck between a rock and a hard place. Kamala's going to have to come out here and really start to do interviews. And also on top of that, she's going to have to throw Joe Biden under the bus. That's the thing that she's going to have to do. They're going to have to accept that, hey, if Kamala wants to move forward and to separate herself from Biden, right, to separate herself from bad policy, she's got to throw Biden under the bus and his policies. And that would also have his own set of issues.
Sitting down with an interview with anyone.
And one of the concerns I've heard, I'm here in New York for the UN General Assembly. I've met with heads of state from South America, from Africa, from Europe, from Asia, foreign ministers, defense ministers, heads of state. All of them have questions about the reliability of the United States and our relationships with core allies. That's one of the key factors I also hope voters will take into account, is that Donald Trump promised he would be an unconventional president, and he overperformed.
But the answer is...
Yeah, and we didn't have any foreign wars, okay? No major foreign conflicts. We were respected on the world stage. So I'm not sure if this guy is really making the point that he thinks he's making here. I think Trump's unconventional approach is what people desire out of our foreign policy, right? So whatever questions these foreign leaders have, the questions are probably, is Trump actually going to make us pay our fair share, right? Is Trump going to continue to allow us to take advantage of America? And the answer to that question is Trump probably is going to make them pay their fair share, and they're not going to keep taking advantage of us, right? So that's probably what they're concerned about the most.
She's too busy? That should be in a stack list. I got to learn how to use the term stack list. That would be number one for my stack list, is to be transparent and open about what my plans are if I'm elected president. That's what I would be doing.
If you watch any of those dozens of interviews of J.D. Vance and Donald Trump, I have a really hard time tracking the line because it goes all over the place. Right. That tells you something.
That's fine.
What you're learning about Vice President Harris is that she's cautious, thoughtful, responsible, and isn't just throwing out ideas every day.
But there is a political calculus on her side in her campaign right now about how much to be out there or not. The focus appears to almost be a local kind of campaign. Right? 7 states.
We got 7 states that are going to decide the next president.
The rest of the country almost doesn't matter. No. And I would say that her campaign seems to approach it that way. There's 7 states. We care about those 7 states. We care about nothing else.
You know, it's not at all true that they care about nothing else.
No, they care about...
But in terms of answering media questions, if you are in one of those 7 states, yes, she just did a long interview in Wisconsin with public radio in Wisconsin, yes, and is not doing interviews in New York City. I wouldn't recommend that she come spend time in New York City campaigning.
Well, she doesn't have to spend time in New York City. The point is this. She needs to do national interviews because she's not running for president of those 7 states. She's running for president of the United States, all 50 states, okay? And she needs to answer questions. And that's the problem here. She's basically taking the risk that, hey, well, I'm only going to do these local interviews and I'm only going to answer questions in these 7 battleground states. But again, what about the rest of the country? Okay, because you got states like Virginia, for example, that, hey, that could be a swing state, right? That could be a state that Trump could easily overperform and end up winning that state. You, at some point, have to realize that, hey, the whole country needs to hear what I believe, right? It's just not these 7 battleground states that need to hear me. The whole country needs to hear me, and that's the whole point of doing a national interview, right? That is the purpose. But they don't feel the need to talk to the rest of the country. They just want to talk to these states, and I just don't think that's a great strategy. Trump is everywhere, right? Trump has been doing rallies literally everywhere across the country, right? He's not leaving any stone left unturned, okay? He is being thorough in how he is trying to become president of the United States, right? He's even campaigning in New York, right? Deep blue places where people think, oh, he has no shot. But he's still out there, New Jersey, etc., because he's trying to be president of the United States, the whole country, right? Not just blue states plus a few battleground states, which is what Kamala Harris is trying to do.
I do recommend that she spends more time answering questions. I thought a presidential debate was a great way to do it. We've got a vice presidential debate coming up early next week, and it's going to be a doozy.
And Tim Walz is going to get destroyed. I have zero doubts that J.D. Vance is going to absolutely destroy Tim Walz in the debate, right? I have zero doubts whatsoever. Okay, I'm honestly more excited for the VP debate than I was for the presidential debate between Kamala and Trump, right? I think that J.D. is going to show out at this debate, and I can't wait.
Do something like Oprah, who's a surrogate, along with all of the actors that go along with it. And look, you can say the same thing about some of the places former President Trump has chosen to go. It's just, I don't know, maybe I'm old and cranky. I just feel like I know less about these candidates than I do at any point in any presidential election in the past.
So you're a vote in favor of the 2-year campaign cycle rather than the European 6-week style?
Yeah.
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 And that is something we've gotten used to, is really knowing the details. So let's all say we agree that the speech she's giving this week, laying out more details about wealth creation, is a great next step.
How deep do you think we're going to get on the details?
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, we're not going to get any details, okay? And also on top of that, I wouldn't say this is the least that we know about, both candidates in any presidential cycle ever. No, because we already know enough about Trump, right? We already have 4 years of Trump, right? So there's not that much more to know about Trump. We already get a sense of his policies. We know what he's going to do. Yeah, we don't know that much about Kamala, right? Because they are the least transparent campaign for president that I've ever seen in my life, right? So I think that's true about Kamala. I don't think that's true about Trump. But regardless, what Kamala's doing right now is not enough. People are still demanding that Kamala Harris actually sit down for an actual real interview, hold a press conference, right? Take questions, okay, from the press, from everybody. She won't even do that. Right. And I think ultimately at the end of the day, it's really damned if you do, damned if you don't. OK, I think she's just a bad candidate. Right. At some point, you just got to accept Kamala's just a bad candidate. And there's nothing that she can really do, because even if she started to talk and she started to do press conferences, she started to do these interviews, she'd fall apart. She'd fall apart. Her campaign would collapse. So either way, it seems to me that Kamala Harris is screwed. Right. Because voters are basically saying we don't know enough about her. OK, and if she actually starts to be transparent, then she's probably going to turn a bunch of people off. So, hey, it is what it is. But let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.